Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we are test driving something all new from Toyota, the new full-size Crown sedan, the new top of the line from the brand. So we're going to have a good look at it inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive, and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. The Toyota Crown is a nameplate that's been with Toyota for quite a long time, and it's been known for their top-of-the-line largest car they offered. And while we have had Crown come to the United States once or twice over the some almost 70 years that the car has been offered, for the most part it's been a Japan-only and global export model that we didn't get in the United States. But for 2023, it's been rebooted, and it now will be offered globally as the same car. And so what is it? Well, essentially in the United States, it replaces the full-size Avalon. And so size-wise, it's almost identical. Same wheelbase, give or take an inch, and the length is exactly the same. The big difference is 4 inches taller. And that's because they've adopted more of a crossover-like silhouette here that gives you a higher seating position, a more commanding view. Sort of fits into the fact that the market really appreciates crossovers and SUVs these days, yet it's still a sedan. And so looking around, you can see that it does have a lot of sedan and styling cues familiar with Toyota. The face, definitely Toyota. Coming around the side, you do have some of those crossover cues here with 21-inch wheels, but you can see the plastic fender lip moldings here, and going down the side you can see the big black moldings there like you expect to find on a crossover. Up on the roof, this has a panoramic glass roof. Now it does not have an opening panel, it is a fixed panel, but does offer that lighting effect for the inside. And coming around to the 3/4 view, you can see that the glass and the trim treatment really start to have a wraparound look, especially with that third window across the C-pillar. And looking at the trunk, kind of an interesting detail. Now this car does look like it might be a hatch, but it is not. That is a conventional trunk. This is a sedan, not a hatch. But sort of that shell detail that you can see around the lights, it looks like there's a separate piece, and that's because there is. But on the platinum level, where this has a two-tone paint treatment that you can get, that whole shell detail back there becomes black. Sort of an interesting detail. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with it from an aesthetic. It is something you're going to recognize going down the road. Nothing else looks like it. Now, the price of the one we have here, this being a limited, is $50,000 and some change. You can spend more if you get the platinum with the upgraded powertrain, or you can spend less by getting the XLE. The interior of the Crown is one of the largest interiors in the Toyota sedan lineup, and being top of the line, you expect a little bit more, not only in room but in feature content. And here in the limited, we do have a lot of feature content. Leather seats, heating and ventilating for the front seats, heated rear seats, all of the bells and whistles throughout. Now in our tester here, we have a black interior, black on black. This is available in two-tone combinations in the limited trim grade. One has black and white, which is very striking to the eye. The other is a chestnut color with black, which is a little bit more subtle, but definitely a little brighter. Personally, as I sit here, I find that this black interior is very monotone and very almost austere in its overall feeling and aura. I will point out that there are some accents across the dash, the door panels, and piping in the seats that have a very faint bronze color, just enough to add a little pop of color. As I sit here in these seats, I find them very comfortable. Heating and ventilating, as I stated, they're power seats, and they're pretty well bolstered for a car that's not necessarily a performance car. The tilt and telescoping steering wheel has a leather cover, and ahead of me, 12.3-inch instrument cluster, fully digital. And over on the center stack, a 12.3-inch infotainment display, which we'll talk about in a minute. Below that is a full bank of HVAC controls, not only for the seats, but for the heating and air conditioning. And the center console, a lot of utility here. There is a slot right up in front for your phone. Mine just fits in there with my cover on it, and it does have a wireless charger built in. There's USB ports and two cup holders here. The toggle shifter, just like you might find in a Prius, it's an electronic switch, drive mode selector, a couple of other buttons. And then here is a pretty interesting door. This can be opened either way for the storage down here in the center console, and a pretty good amount of storage that is, about the size of 2 square tissue boxes. You could put those side by side in there to give you an idea of the size. And there's also some additional power ports. As I look up, I have the aforementioned panoramic roof. It does not open, but it does have a cover that you can close if you don't want all that light and heat coming in, but it does add a nice airy atmosphere here in the cabin. The rear seat of the Crown is a space that, as you can see, is plenty roomy. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8" with my dress shoes on. I've got about 6 inches of knee room ahead of me, so I could have somebody who's 6 foot plus tall sitting here with a seat further back, and I still wouldn't feel too cramped. What I will tell you though is that even though the hybrid battery is located under the seat, which usually gives us a higher seating position, and this being a crossover tall vehicle, they could have given us a little bit higher of a seating position. I'm actually sitting pretty low. I feel like still I'm sitting down in a hole a little bit. My knees are perched up and I'm sitting down in this seat rather than on it. I do have pretty good headroom above my head. There's an indentation here that sort of gets around the fact that this roof does sit lower because of this extra window here. The good news is I do have some side support here. That couldn't really be said for the center passenger who would be sitting up on the hump. Now, there are some good amenities back here. Thank goodness there are vents blowing on me right now. It's 111 degrees outside. And there's also USB ports on the back of that console. Here in the center, there is a nice fold-down armrest with some cup holders built in. And as you might expect, these seats do fold down in a 60-40 split, even with the hybrid battery. But looking at the trunk, it's pretty good size back there. I made a huge trip to Costco this week and brought home a month's worth of stuff, and it all fit in there, no problem. Underneath that floor is a mini spare tire. Good thing they didn't cheap out and give us a inflator kit or something like that. I always like it when they give you the ability to help yourself out in the wild instead of having to call a tow truck if you really mess up a tire. The material quality in here is, I would say, class average. There is hard plastic here and there, but they also have bolstered that with some soft trims where your hands and your skin and your arms will typically touch. Being that this is the top of the line car for Toyota, I'm a little bit surprised that it's not maybe a little bit more. For me, just my design eye, and this is getting into subjective opinion land, seems pretty uninspired and average. I don't see anything here that's really presenting this is a top of the line car in terms of how it looks and how it feels. It's average. But that said, the fit and finish is well done. This is a car that's manufactured in Japan, not one of the US factories. And that definitely comes through in terms of this being a solid interior free of rattles and squeaks. This interior gets 4 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is Toyota's latest, greatest, fully featured connected system. And here it's got the 12.3-inch screen. This has a Google backend, but unlike some vehicles where you say, "Hey Google," this one you say, "Hey Toyota," when you want to call up its features. This does have AM, FM, Bluetooth connectivity, Sirius satellite radio, and of course it has nav, as you can see on the screen. Navigating the menus is pretty easy. It's not quite as straightforward as some of the previous generation systems from Toyota. It does require a lot of paging and going from one menu to the next, then down the tree within that menu, where some of the earlier Toyota systems were a little bit more easy to navigate. When it comes to rating this system, I like the fact that the graphics are good, it's easy to navigate, the sound quality reasonably good, though not as good as you'd think for being the top of the line system, JBL, 11 speakers. The only real big complaint I have here is that a lot of the feature content that really makes this a nice system is subscription based. If you're not paying the monthly subscription, you're not getting really a whole lot more here than comes standard in a base Corolla. So with that lens that I'm looking through as a customer, I'm a little bit put off when I see a car that really advertises a lot of great bells and whistles, but oh, by the way, you have to pay monthly for all that. So this system, good though it may be, on its merits, gets 4 out of 5 stars, pretty much based on the fact that a lot of these features go away if you're not paying extra every month. All right, my friends, let's take a drive. So this is a car that comes standard with all-wheel drive no matter which model you get, and it comes standard hybrid no matter which model you get. Because we are in the Limited, this has the standard hybrid drivetrain, which consists of a 2.5-liter gasoline engine up front with a conventional Toyota tried and true eCVT with electric motors in it. And at the rear axle, it has an electric motor, which adds power there. So you do have true all-wheel drive. Now this has a total system horsepower of 263 horsepower, and it's rated by the EPA at 42 city, 41 highway, and 41 mpg combined. So if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So I'm going to come to a complete stop and go. Sounds like a hybrid. And 60. So there you go. Now, Toyota claims a 0 to 60 time on this particular model at 7.6 seconds. My time varies just a little bit. It's 105 degrees, the air conditioner is on, so that always needs to be taken into account. But power is very smooth in its delivery. You'd expect that. Hybrids, and Toyota's hybrids especially, have become known for that. And it does sort of have that leaf blower sound, but that goes with the territory. So driving it around, and the driving experience here is very much just like any other Toyota hybrid you might have ever driven. In fact, it's identical because the powertrain is identical. It's essentially the same powertrain that you're going to find in a RAV4 hybrid, in a Highlander hybrid, a Camry hybrid with all-wheel drive, and so on. Very common, very well proven. And Toyota's been doing this for quite some time. They know what they're doing. So what that means is you have a powertrain that you rarely can tell the difference between gas and electric power. It's very seamless. You don't really feel the transitions happening. The only real cue that you have that the gasoline engine is running is that you hear it, but you don't have a lot of that switch and jerk and a lot of the clunking that you used to hear, say, 10 or 15 years ago with hybrids. Now, in my week with it, I achieved 38 mpg. In fact, it might even be a little bit lower than that, so it didn't quite meet what the window sticker says, but I will point out that it's been 105 to 107 degrees most of my driving this week. And because of that, the air conditioner has been on all of the time. And typically hybrid vehicles don't perform as well when it's extremely hot, because all of the cooling systems that keep you cool and the car cool are operated by electric power, and therefore more of that electric power that would normally power the vehicle is going to power keeping everything cool. And so as a result, the gas engine's running more and therefore a little bit less mpg. So not a big deal there. I'm sure in cooler temperatures this thing probably easily performs where it's supposed to. I will say though that this is still a hybrid powertrain, and it's still a middle of the road powertrain in terms of refinement overall. And when we get into a car that's sort of a top of the line car, the Hybrid Max powertrain might be something that meets more people's expectations in terms of performance and refinement. This is a little bit more middle of the road in that way. This powertrain gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now, when it comes to ride, drive, and handling, this is a car that's built on the same platform that many of Toyota's cars are, the TNGA K platform. And so it drives very similarly to every other Toyota that I've tested this year, just about, except for body-on-frame trucks and SUVs. It has a McPherson strut front suspension, a multi-link rear suspension, and this has a ride that is tuned generally for comfort. If you step all the way up to the Platinum, it does have the adaptive dampers, which can give you a little bit more of a performance driving experience when you adjust the drive modes. But this particular model has one setting to the suspension which tends to lean towards comfort. Now, even though the suspension is tuned for a more comfortable, softer ride, which has a little bit of float to it, this does have 21-inch wheels. And so around town, you can see here, we have speed humps here in Phoenix, and I've really sort of come to adopt these as kind of an interesting little test to see how well tuned a chassis is, because some cars absorb these really well, other cars tend to do it pretty harshly. And so I'm going at the speed limit, 25, and here we go. And I do find that there's a little bit of a clunk in the suspension when I do go over these things. Now, that's also to be said for rougher pavement, speed bumps, potholes, manhole covers, things like that. This is a suspension that does tend to get pretty harsh over rougher pavement. And that may be part and parcel to these low profile tires on this. If you get a lower trim grade without these big wheels or without the package that comes with these wheels, you might have a smoother, quieter ride. But I have found that it does tend to be a little bit harsh, this one, over rougher pavement. Now out on the highway, this does have a nice, quiet, smooth ride. 70 mile an hour decibel test came in at about 57.9, which is below average. This car does have a lot of sound deadening to keep it quiet. That was part of keeping the buyer profile happy. People that buy cruisers like this like a quiet car, and it's definitely that. It has acoustic glass. And even in here, I can just tell by talking right now, it's got a very hushed atmosphere. Steering is light around town. It has a nice feel to it, as good as it's going to get for electronic power steering. It tends to be somewhat responsive going into corners and driving around town in that way. I will tell you though that at the end of the day, this car is really tuned to be a cruiser, not so much a high-performance sedan. If you want that, you need to step up to the Platinum that not only has more power, but that adaptive suspension. This chassis gets 4 out of 5 stars. In the final analysis, after we've taken it for a drive and had a good look inside and out and talked about some of its benefits and its features and maybe some of its areas where it could be better, I like to talk about value and competitiveness. Now, there aren't that many full-size sedans in the market, let alone full-size hybrid sedans. So it's kind of a unicorn in that way. It essentially replaces the Toyota Avalon, as I talked about earlier in the video, although it's a different animal. It's taller like a crossover, and it comes all hybrid all of the time. And so it really sort of fits a niche. If anything, this is like a big giant Prius. Think about a Prius only made full size and a little bit more like a sedan. That's what this is. And I think there's a market for that. And a quick little story, when the first night that I had this, we went to a gathering of friends, and in the parking lot, I pulled in, and a friend of mine from across the parking lot, I saw his head look up, and he lit up, and he got totally focused and interested in this car. And my partner says, "Oh, he's looking at it." And I said, yeah, that's because he's the buyer demographic. And by that, I mean, my friend that I'm describing is a little bit more mature, and he's moneyed, you know. He's got money to buy whatever he wants, but he's sensible. And he immediately wanted to know what I was driving that night. So I think that really says it all. This is a car that most buyers are probably going to be over 50 and probably have money, because it is something that you're going to spend a little bit more money on to get into than just any other car. But it's Toyota, it's not a Lexus, right? So we're not into the luxury segment. This is a car that's middle of the road, middle ground when it comes to quality and driving experience, but it does have a lot of things that nothing else offers. So that said, warranty coverage, 336 bumper to bumper, 5 years, 60,000 miles for the powertrain. So that's class average. I put value here at 4 out of 5 stars, all of the things that we talk about. And when you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4 out of 5 stars for the review. Pretty good. Definitely worth a look if this is a car that appeals to you, if you like the Prius for what it's about, how it drives, fuel economy, but you want something bigger and a little bit more relaxing and calming to just cruise around in, this is your car. Pretty interesting vehicle, I'd say. So if you like what we do here, you can see our latest video right there, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there and stay informed of everything we do. Either way, stay tuned.